What's up? What's up, everybody? This is Superspeed. This tutorial is going to cover a large amount of glitches, specifically overworld glitches. There's going to be a lot of topics covered in this one, so if you are interested in just a specific topic, you can consult the table of contents in the description below the video, which should have timestamps linked for each section. So in this one, we're going to cover teleports, which is abuse of a game mechanic, how to execute teleports with dash buffered clips, as well as a few other applications of dash buffered clipping. I'm going to go over Superspeed Clips, which are clips that abuse the superspeed mechanic. There's a couple different kinds of mirror clips that I'll talk about, mirror hops and the mirror jump. There's a weird auto walk mechanic that doesn't have a proper name, so I'm going to refer to that as the funny auto walk thing. And hopefully when I explain that it makes a little more sense. Screen wrapping and a few miscellaneous things will come after that. Alright, enough messing around. First thing I want to talk about is teleports, but to understand how teleports work, I'm going to have to explain a little bit about how the game mechanics work without going into too much detail. Basically, the Super Nintendo constructs games in 8 pixel by 8 pixel blocks, and interactive attributes are generally assigned to the entire tile. So these things are 16 pixels by 16 pixels, and they all have the same attributes. For these ones specifically, I can't walk through them, I can throw objects through them, and if I press a button like A, it will lift them. Other ones are fully solid, you can't throw anything through them, nothing happens when you press buttons, and there's other interactive attributes like hammerable pegs. These again are 16 by 16 tiles, but they're built of 4 8 pixel by 8 pixel tiles. Now the one place where that rule seems to be broken is on diagonal slopes. When we walk along these, the game doesn't make us move in like a funny 8 pixel staircase pattern. Instead it tries to move us in a straight diagonal across it. And it does this by sort of bypassing its own collision detection using some sort of weird calculation. It tries to determine where you are, what button you're pressing, you know, the shape of the wall to determine where to put you in the next frame. So by embedding ourselves partially into these walls, we can actually make that calculation return some very incorrect value. I can't explain exactly how it works, but what'll end up happening is it'll try to compensate and determine where our position should be, and returns a very wrong value, thus teleporting us somewhere else, either straight north or straight south, some amount. So that's what a teleport is. And now I'll teach you how to do them. First, to embed ourselves into these walls, we're going to be using a technique called dash buffering. So what we'll do is hold our sword north or south. I prefer doing it north because the visual cue that I use is the bottom of Link's shadow. And if you hold it south, that can be a little bit obstructed. But to get into these walls, we're going to do a dash buffer. And what that means is to press the direction on the D-pad and the A button or the dash button on the same frame. We're going to be moving either left or right, and it should look something like this when you try it. To do this, I like to turn my controller sideways and use my left hand to hold the B button to hold the sword out, and then I'll use 2 fingers in my right hand to press A in the D-pad. I like to use my middle finger on the D-pad and my thumb on the A button. That way I'm hitting the 2 buttons that have to be hit on the same frame. I'm hitting them with the 2 different fingers on the same hand, and that makes it a little easier to hit them at the same time. So by using that technique, we can pretty much just start moving into walls. This only works on diagonal walls, and it only works in the overworld. If you're inside of a dungeon, this will not work. So that's the technique to get into walls. To actually get the teleport though, this is a pretty precise trick, so I'm going to have to show the pixels and hopefully explain the visual cues as well as I can. I like to use Link's shadow as a visual cue because it's perfectly symmetrical and the dark pixels contrast very well with anything around them. I'll show this on a left and a right facing wall. The visual cue is the same, it's perfectly symmetrical, so I'll only explain it on one side, but I'll show it on both just so you can see how it looks. Alright, So there's a lot of different walls that all have different visual cues, and I'm going to have to go over all of them individually. First up is Dark World walls. These kind of walls here that appear to rise out of the ground. Obviously the game doesn't have real depth, it's all pseudo perspective. This is one kind of wall, so these are the ones I'll show first. Alright, so what we're going to want to look for here is there's these little rocks like right on the edge of the wall. They kind of go along the outside of it. Along each of these they have a dark black border. What we want to look for is the column of vertical pixels. There's only one column of vertical pixels for every 8 pixel pattern along the wall. So that's what we want to look for. And we want to try to line up the lowest row of pixels on Link's shadow directly above those. So if I start to dash buffer into this wall just a little bit, you can start to see that that row of pixels in Link's shadow is one above that one in the wall. So when I get into the wall, you can see they connect. When I'm outside the wall, you can see there's still a gap there. So we're going to need to be exactly 8 pixels into the wall for an upward teleport and exactly 9 for a downward teleport. The visual cue for an upward teleport, 8 pixels in, you'll see that that vertical row of pixels connects to Link's shadow, and a single pixel from the bottom row of Link's shadow extends beyond that column of pixels. That's the cue for an upward teleport. The cue for a downward teleport is one deeper than that, which is right there. So you'll see the vertical pixel creates a longer vertical row when it connects to Link's shadow. You should see a very long one with a right angle showing only 2 pixels extending off of it to the side from the second row of Link's shadow. So once you get into one of these two positions, you need to activate the teleport. To do this, we need the next input that the game receives and instructs Link to move to be a down left input for a wall on this side, and for the opposite side it's symmetrical. You just want to do a down right input. So basically a diagonal input towards the wall. Now the lateral inputs on a Super Nintendo controller are separate inputs, and we can't have either the left or the down input happen for even a single frame before the other. So we're going to buffer this input, which means we're going to perform an action during which the game will not instruct Link to move at all, and during that time we're going to start holding the D-pad. So if we open our menu, for example, and then I close it, and while I'm closing it I start holding down left, then you'll see the teleport activates as soon as the game re-gives you control of the player there. So again, the bottom pixel of Link's shadow needs to be one above that vertical row there. Move all the way in. This time we'll do an upward teleport. You can see the bottom row of Link's shadow has just a single pixel extending beyond that vertical row in the wall. Then this time I'm going to release my sword and hold down left while the sword is spinning. This will also give me enough time to buffer the directional inputs in order to do an upward teleport. Now to see that on the opposite side wall, that's a downward teleport. And that's upward. Nice and easy, right? Okay, you may have noticed while I was doing those that it seemed I got into the wall on the left a lot faster than the one on the right, and that is the case. The way that Link's movement pattern works, each dash buffered input to the left moves 2 pixels at a time, and each one to the right only moves 1. This means that you do have more precision when moving to the right. If you want to move in exactly 9 pixels to the left, you have to move in 5 inputs for 10 and then back to the right once to make 9. Whereas on the right side you'll never have to do that. However, because you are moving more at a time, you do have to do less total inputs on the left, which I think makes them a little bit easier. But that's a matter of opinion, I suppose. The visual cue for walls in the light world I think is a little bit more difficult to learn at first, but with a little practice it becomes pretty intuitive. Alright, so in the Dark World there was only a single column of vertical pixels on each of the rocks in the wall. In the Light World, these are more of like smooth humps instead of like rocks embedded into the wall, but you want to think about it the same way. For each hump there's a single pixel that will work. So for this one, what we're going to look for is 2 rows of vertical pixels next to each other, and we're going to use the top one of those 2. So you can kind of see here, this is the bottom one that I'm moving towards now. We don't want to use that one. We want to use the top one, which is this one right here. can kind of see that. So from here, the visual cue is actually going to be pretty much exactly the same. We're going to either line up that vertical row of pixels perfectly with the bottom row of Link's shadow to make a much longer vertical line, or we're going to have a single pixel from Link's shadow extend beyond it. And that'll work pretty much exactly the same. You see that on the right side. There we go. It's also possible to do teleports on these different kinds of walls. For these ones, the first walls I kind of described as being raised out of the ground and sort of obstructing you, and you know, raising up to a high ground. For these, you want to think of them more as barriers, which prevent you from falling down to a low ground. Which is why it's possible to go completely through these. And that's what I'll show first before actually showing the teleport here. If you dash buffer into one of these walls, and you keep going long enough, you'll just jump through them. That was kind of a freaky display of that, because the camera tried to compensate when you try to jump through the outside of that barrier, and yeah, it looks weird, but but yeah, you'll just jump through the wall if you keep buffering through it. If I do it a little higher up, it might look like a regular jump. Yeah, that makes a little more sense. So that's how that works. So for teleports on these kinds of walls, the visual cue on this one is also kind of awkward, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty intuitive. So again, we're going to look at these repeating hump patterns on the walls, and we're going to look for a row of vertical pixels. At the top of the vertical black pixels, there's a single lighter pixel at the top of each of these, and I believe this is an anti-aliasing pixel meant to make the walls appear more smooth in their curve here. So I'm going to refer to that as the anti-aliasing pixel for the sake of these descriptions. It is kind of hard to see, but hopefully you can see it okay. So for this one, we're going to start dash buffering into the wall like we did before. Actually, we're going to start with the bottom row of Link's shadow directly above the anti-aliasing pixel this time. Then we're going to start dash buffering into the wall. And what we want to actually see is the dark row of vertical pixels, the single anti-aliasing pixel, and a single light pixel above that. And that's how we know we've got the upward teleport. And then of course, to do a downward teleport, we only go a single pixel farther in than that. So the visual cue for this one will be to see the vertical row of dark pixels, the single anti-aliasing pixel, and two lighter pixels above that. And then you'll know you have the downward teleport. In this case, it should send me through the screen transition, yeah. But you still, you see what happened there. Alright, for the light world version of clips into these walls, again, we're going to look for another vertical row of dark pixels in the wall. We're going to line up Link's shadow, so he's the bottom row is a single pixel above that vertical row of pixels in the wall, and start dash buffering into the wall. This one, like all the other ones, is kind of hard to explain. Right now I'm on the downward teleport pixel, so the vertical row of dark pixels here, on the top of it you'll see a single pixel of the ground, and then you'll see Link's shadow 1 pixel above that. For the downward teleport, the pixel of Link's shadow that's directly above this is in line with the vertical line in the wall. If I'm a single pixel farther out for the upward teleport, you can see that there's the vertical row, the single light pixel, and then Link's shadow extends 1 pixel out of the wall. So that should be an upward teleport. And to show the downward teleport here, again, that's what it looks like. I messed up. That's what happens. Actually, what I did there is something I explained that you want to not happen earlier. I started to hit the D-pad before I released the spin, so I hit one of the D-pad directions before the other one, which caused me to just get pushed out of the wall. So when I release the spin, then press the D-pad, and you'll get the teleport. In this case, I get stuck in this wall, which sometimes happens depending on where you teleport, but you get the idea. It's actually possible to do a teleport on these kind of rocks that you find in the Overworld. So far I haven't really found any real useful application for this, other than just kind of showing off once in a while. So again, what we're going to look for is a row of vertical pixels. The sides of these are like perfectly straight, dark vertical lines. We're going to look for the first row of vertical pixels inside of that, like just this second one right here. 1 pixel in from the outside. So we'll line up link shadow so the bottom row is 1 pixel above it. This one's a little confusing because it's very similar to the first one. You move in far enough that the bottom row of link's pixel lines up with that vertical row to create a longer vertical line. That would have been a downward teleport on the first walls that I showed, but in this case this is actually going to achieve an upward teleport. And then to do a downward, of course you're just going to be 1 pixel deeper than that, which is right there. This looks like it looks like an upward teleport on the last ones that I showed, the little barrier walls, where there's the vertical dark row of pixels, the single light one, and then the row of link's shadow that's directly above that extends 1 pixel out from that vertical row, and you should get a downward teleport. So that's kind of cool. Alright, the next thing I want to show is how to predict where you're going to end up after you do a teleport, because sometimes it doesn't really behave as you might expect it to. For example, if I come down here and do a downward teleport, you would expect it to move me south onto the high ground here, and it will, as you can see. However, if I come over here and do the same thing, do a downward teleport, it's going to do something weird. It's going to seem to not work at first, and then it's going to kind of throw you off the cliff. But what the game is doing is it determines where you're going to end up on the next frame of movement, as it's trying to like recompensate for the collision detection, but it does the same thing anytime you move. Like right now, if I move up, it's going to try to see if there's empty ground in front of me, and if there is, it's going to let me move up. So what's happening is it's actually doing the calculation for the teleport, and it's determining that you would land on that ledge up there. So it actually starts activating the ledge as if you're walking against it, and then 20 frames later, you jump off of it. So to get where we want to be, in this case, the walls are more short. If we try to pretend the game has real depth, we can visualize these kind of walls as being shorter walls, and these as being taller walls. So only on the shorter walls can you teleport directly to the high ground from a concave, obtuse angle like this when you're on the inside of it. A concave, obtuse angle on a tall wall, however, will not give such predictable results. The way that you can get up to the high ground, however, on these kind of walls, what you're going to want to look for are vertical sections of tall wall like this, and we're going to aim to embed ourselves into the wall near the top of them so we can actually activate this ledge from the opposite side and then jump to the high ground. So for walls of this size, we're going to go to the third hump from the bottom corner. If the walls are different sizes, just start doing the clip. So what I'll do is I'll start doing the clip here, and once I get on the correct pixel, I'll just try to gauge my position on this axis, and if it looks like I'm going to end up near the ledge, then that's probably okay. So I'll do the teleport, end up in the wall, I'll press left, and then I'll just be able to jump right up to the high ground. So that's kind of the way that you want to use this kind of teleporting to get around. Upward teleports are usually more predictable, or at least more intuitive. Once you start to get the hang of downward teleports, you'll find that their outcome is generally predictable as well. Again, I can just do a downward teleport here because this is a short wall. Perfectly predictable. There are a very large amount of applications to teleports, and I can't show all of them, but once you start to learn a lot of them, you'll find that improvising with them is actually really simple. And just looking around, you'll start to see places where you can clip to get to new places that you probably never thought you'd be able to get to before. Just some of them are silly places, some of them are cool shortcuts. I'm going to show a montage of a assortment of different applications, some of the more popular or more silly ones, right now. Superspeed is classified as a minor glitch, but it's very easy to use it to go out of bounds, which of course is a major glitch. So I'm going to show a few ways that you can do that. The first and easiest way is to find a corner of these kind of barrier walls, like this, and then you'll just do a superspeed glitch. I'm going to do a spin dash. Press down so you're touching this bottom wall, and then just hold down right or down left to the corner. And it's pretty much that easy. Sometimes when you do this, you'll kind of get stuck in the corner. If that happens, you just need to change from down right to either down or right. Both inputs will actually work. So yeah, if you find yourself you just kind of got stuck, like you're not going to quite jump, you can just wiggle or whatever on the D-pad and it'll work just fine. You can get through corners in the north, but they behave a little strangely. If you try to just hold up into the wall and then hold upright, you get kind of pushed out of it. So you got to do it a little differently. What I'm going to do, I'll show it down here. I'm going to hold up, and then I'm just going to sort of tap the upright button, just kind of alternate between up and upright at a rhythm. So what you'll do is you'll move into the wall by holding upright, and then hold up to jump. If you just tap it a couple times, usually you go right through. Just a couple taps, and then you're through. Nice and easy. On these diagonal walls, these longer stretches of diagonal walls, you next do a hook dash. If you hold your sword out so you stay facing north or south, do your hook dash, and then move left or right through the wall, you'll just jump right through it. So that's how you get through these kind of barrier style walls. It's also possible, instead of just clipping through concave corners, you can actually clip through convex corners like this one. Okay, so it needs to be a vertical section of wall connecting at the top to a diagonal section, so it's shaped like this. And what you'll do is you kind of stand right on the corner, do your super speed, and then you hold down diagonal into the wall. So here I'll hold down right, and I'll go through the corner like that. These are, as far as I know, there's only a single pixel you can stand on for them to work. So they are kind of difficult, and they're really not the best option. If you do have the boots, you can actually do a dash buffer, as shown in the previous section, and just dash buffer through the wall. It's probably easier, usually, than trying to find an exact pixel. You can also do it, of course, with the hook dash, as I just showed, but you won't always have the hook shot available to you. But if you can do a spin dash, then you do have the boots, and if you do have the boots, you might as well dash buffer. But it is possible to get through those like that as well. Alright, so in addition to those kinds of barrier walls that you can just jump through, you can actually do spin dash clips on these other kinds of walls, and they have a consistent effect on all of them. What'll happen is you'll get into the wall far enough that you'll jump, and you'll jump at a straight diagonal 45-degree in line with the wall. So if I do a spin dash here and walk into this wall as if to jump through it, you'll just sort of jump straight at a 45-degree angle that way. like this. A lot of the time that doesn't really put you anywhere. You can do it down here in a similar way to the thin walls, like that. And it always kind of jumps you the same way. And this only works on these shorter overworld walls, not these taller ones. If I try to do it here, you're just gonna kind of go into the wall and nothing's gonna happen. So it doesn't work there. Again, you can also use hook dash clips to get the same effect. And again, won't work on these taller style walls. You'll just sort of go into them and get stuck. For these clips to be effective, the area diagonal to where you jump has to have something actually worth landing on. It can't be more of the same wall or open space like this. And there are a few places where it's effective. So I'll show a quick montage of several applications of spin dash clips, including a few applications of this one, so you can see how that's effective, as well as clipping through regular or the thin barrier walls like on Death Mountain. The first kind of out-of-bounds clip that I'll show that uses the mirror is usually just referred to simply as a mirror clip or maybe a mirror hop, but specifically not a mirror jump. A mirror jump is a specific name for the next glitch that I'll show. So this one only has a few real notable applications, so I'll just go over the applications to show how they each work, instead of showing a lot of theory and then a montage of applications afterwards, like the previous glitches. Okay, so these ledges that appear here in the light world are not here in the dark world, and that's so that you can't jump down into the Turtle Rock dungeon from an incorrect entrance. So to do this, the first thing we want to do is stand directly above where one of these ledges would be in the light world, but in the dark world. So I'll come over here and stand in front of this one, and then I'll simply move down without jumping. Be careful not to jump off. Wait for the portal to take you back to the dark world, and then all I gotta do now is hold down and you'll jump down here. It's just that easy. The second application of this is the oldest version of Death Mountain Descent that anybody actually found before more advanced out-of-bounds glitches were found. So for this one, we'll press ourselves up against this wall and then mirror to the light world. Now what we need to do is actually move a single pixel east, just one. I can do this pretty easily, but what you want to use as a visual cue here is you can see the front of Link's shadow here will just be touching this this black line on the bridge. You start one pixel away, so you start right here. You want to move one pixel farther. That's all you want to do. Your Y position doesn't really matter, so you can come up here and spend as much time as you need adjusting your position before moving back down into the portal. It's worth noting that if you're facing left, it will not be the same visual cue. This only applies if you are facing to the right. Facing north or south, it will also be different. But as long as you move just one pixel, then back down into the warp, you'll be fine. So now I'm actually embedded into this wall, just a single pixel, and it's not obvious at all. But what happens now is if I move to the Dark World, this portal is now 1 pixel farther east than it was the first time. So if I move into this portal from as far east as I can, then, well, you'll see what happens. I'll be farther embedded into the wall. So what I'll do is I'll kind of move left and right up there to get on the right pixel, then move straight down into it, as I did previously, and then you can just jump out of bounds into this weird volcanic space down here. From here you can actually go to the lower Hyrule from Death Mountain. This is what makes it a Death Mountain descent glitch, is the fact that it lets you go from Death Mountain to the lower part of the overworld, which you're not supposed to be able to do. And those are pretty much the only applications of the very easy mirror hop out of bounds glitch. The next out of bounds glitch that uses a mirror is called the mirror jump, and as an extension of this I'm also going to show a zip. Alright, so for this specific application, and there aren't too many applications of this, but for this one we're going to start as if we're doing a regular mirror jump or a regular mirror hop or mirror clip like I showed just a minute ago, by kind of putting ourselves inside this wall using the mirror to warp us to and fro. Okay, so from here I'm actually going to execute the mirror jump. So what I'm going to do, since I'm basically on a ledge right now, is I'm going to activate the jump, but on the same frame that the jump starts, I'm going to use the mirror. Okay, so when I start holding down, it takes exactly 20 frames for the jump to start, and on that exact 20th frame I have to use the mirror. It is quite difficult. So for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to use frame advance in order to, well, for one thing, to not mess it up, but also so you can see the subtlety of how it looks when it is done successfully. Alright, so I'll go ahead and do that now. There it is. On that frame you see him start to jump, and that's also the same frame that the mirror animation starts, so I'll restore normal speed there. Alright, now what I'll do is let this warp me back to the Dark World, and I'll do it a second time. Again, I'll use frame advance, just so I don't mess it up. Alright, looks good. Okay, so when you're 2 frames deeper into a ledge than you would normally be able to get, or when you've successfully done 2 mirror jumps, you can hold the down left input and you'll get zipped directly east. Down left and you'll get zipped to the right. If you hold down right, unfortunately it does not work in the opposite direction. You do not get zipped left, you can only do this left to right. Alright, so I'm going to make a save state here. Alright, so I'm going to show, I'm going to let the zip just take me as far as it will. It won't take me all the way across this ledge, it'll jump me off somewhere randomly, or seemingly randomly, but you can at least get an idea of how fast this is from this demonstration. It is quite fast. Alright, so for this specific application, what you'll want to do is stop the zip above the little platform that you want to jump down to, and then you can just jump normally after you stop moving. So for this one specifically, there's a 3-frame window, and you're going to want to use, probably want to use buffering, menu buffering or some technique to get you closer to it more carefully. Okay, it took me 2 tries, but that's how that's supposed to look if done correctly. And this is a little shortcut to get to the back door of Turtle Rock a little faster. Another application of the mirror jump is a technique that we used to get to this this frog a little bit earlier. Specifically if we don't have the Titan bits. So if we don't have the lifting upgrade required to lift these rocks, we can use a mirror jump to get to him. This has kind of a long setup. First we line up with these rocks and move straight down to the cliff here to mirror the first time. And then we just sort of kind of move into this wall a little bit, kind of going back and forth between the light and the dark world to eventually get up these stairs and near the rocks. This does take a while, but it's what you have to do. I'm gonna make a safe state just in case I mess up. don't have to redo it. Okay. Okay, cool. So now from here, we're going to do a mirror jump to the left. Again, I'm going to use frame advance just so I can make sure to not mess it up. Alright, now I'm one pixel farther to the left than I started, and that just happens to be exactly as much as you need to be able to get to him and rescue him. Alright, now that I've done mirror jumps with frame advance a bunch of times, I think you should see what it looks like without doing so. So there's actually an alternate technique to get to this guy that involves doing 5 successful mirror jumps in a row. And it's only a little bit faster, but it's insanely hard. So I recorded a little video of that, and I'm going to play that now, just so you can see what it looks like. The first 4 get you into the normal starting position that you would use with the other technique, and then of course the 5th one is the same as the final one from the other technique that I showed, and that's just enough to get you to the guy. The next thing I want to show doesn't really have a proper name. I sort of refer to it as the funny auto walk thing, because Link basically automatically walks in a straight line, bypassing any obstacles that are in his way for a while. And it's cool because it does let you to bypass some obstacles on the overworld. So what we want to do here is partially overlap the screen transition without activating it. Now, if we just walk into it, obviously, as soon as we're close to it, it activates. So we're going to need to do this by either teleporting into it or by jumping off of a sideways ledge to where we'd land partially past the screen transition. So if I do it here, and if I just do a downward teleport, this will actually... I'll do a downward teleport, sorry, and then jump. Alright, now I'm in exactly where I want to be. Partially overlapping the transition here. So what's interesting now is that the physical objects that you interact with here are actually whatever is on the top of this screen. So if I walk over here, you'll see I get blocked. That's because there's a wall at that location on the top of this screen. So when you walk around, you might seem to walk into some random obstacles. So you might have to look at a map or just try to remember what the top of the screen that you're on looks like to see what you're walking into. Okay, so when you're partially embedded on a screen like that, a screen transition, you can actually just walk down, and that's enough to activate it. So you can see I just sort of walk automatically for a while, through the house, through everything. I have no control over it, it just sort of happens. So there's a few applications of this, and each have their own considerations, so I'll have to explain them each in some detail. The first one I can actually do right here. So I'll walk all the way over here, think about to there, and then go down. I'll walk across this water and all the way to the Lake Hylia heart piece. It's a nice way to be able to get to this without having to go to the Dark World or have the flippers or anything. Pretty much don't need any items to get here. It's quite nice. The second one I want to show is the most common Death Mountain Descent, or DMD, technique. For this one, you do a super speed glitch, spin dash in this case, and you're going to walk through this corner, as I showed in the super speed clipping tutorial, Now from here you got to be very, very careful. You don't want to press any buttons on the D-pad. The first thing you want to do is start charging a dash and then face north. You can't see the sprite, the character sprite, so you just have to press A and then press up. Press A first, then press up, and let him dash into the wall. After that, you can just press down, walk through these trees, and now you're on the lower high roll from Death Mountain. Alright, another way to do DMD, in this case it's a way to get to the catfish from Death Mountain. Do a spin dash, again you can do a spin dash clip here. Now Link's movement pattern is a little funny, and that means that if you start at inconsistent places, if you start your movement at different places, you may jump at slightly different pixels. So for this one I like to walk down on this slope at least a little bit, that way I'm sure the starting location is the same, and then hold down left from there, and you'll just go right through the transition, right down here to the catfish. Get your quake and move on. Again, another form of DMD will be to use the same kind of glitch to get to the Witch's Hut screen. This will work in the light world or the dark world, but I'm just going to show in the dark world because that's where I happen to be already. So again, we're going to do a spin dash. In this case, we need to hold down to jump. So what we'll do is hold down and then just sort of tap the right button to move a little bit into the wall and then continue holding down. And we'll just do that a few times until we jump. And from here, we have to press up for the game to push us down. And that'll be enough to moonwalk to the Witch's Hut. Again, you can do it in the dark or the light world, whichever one you want. Works exactly the same from that position. One more application of the funny auto walk thing is to get to the Ice Rod Cave location from this screen. This is where we would land if we fluted to Flute Zone 5. And clipping down from here is kind of quick to get to the Ice Rod Cave, but also noteworthy is this will work in the dark world. And in that case, it might be much more of a shortcut depending on where you're trying to go. I'm going to do it in the light world just because it works in both. It doesn't really matter which one I show it in. So in the teleport section, I mentioned that on taller walls like this, downward teleports don't tend to be predictable, but sometimes they do end up putting you somewhere from which you can actually work with. So I'm going to line myself up to do a downward teleport right here. This is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th hump from the top of the wall, and do a downward teleport from here. So when I do this, the game's going to detect the ledge below me, and it's going to activate that after 20 frames, as ledges take to activate. And then where I'll end up is actually a place from which I can just press down to jump to the high ground. So in this case, it works out okay. So to do the funny auto walk thing, we need to be partially overlapping the screen transition. And to do this, I'm going to do a downward teleport from this position right here. And there you go. Since there's these big walls on the top of this screen, normally if you just transition down, you get stuck in them. So you do have to do that bridge to get down here. To execute the funny auto walk thing, we had to partially embed ourselves on a screen transition before activating it. But for a screen wrap, what we're going to do is completely bypass one. There's two ways that we're going to do this. First is jumping through the screen transition at the bottom of a screen and wrapping around to the top of the screen. And the other way is going to be to use an upward teleport to teleport past the top of the screen and up from the bottom. Alright, there's some theory stuff I should probably go over first. The game keeps track of your coordinate position, obviously, on the overworld. And there's a true coordinate position relative to your position on the entire overworld map, but your position on an individual screen is also used. The position on the entire overworld map is used for actually resolving screen transitions. It checks that to determine what screen it should load next when you move through this. And it also checks whether you're in the light or the dark world. That's not relevant here, but it will come into play in one of the later tutorials. So when you do a screen wrap, in this case I'll teleport north and I'm going to end up on the bottom of the screen. What's going to end up happening is my true coordinate position on the overworld is going to continue moving north. So you see where I am now on there, in the grass near those trees there. But I'm going to underflow my position on the screen that I'm currently on, and I'm going to be interacting with physical objects on the lower side of this screen, namely this tree here. That's what I'll use as a point of reference. So let me just do this here. do the upward teleport. Alright, so now I'm in that little nook. Here's the tree, here's the slope on the side of the screen. And if I move up, I'll actually be able to interact with objects that you can actually see. And now if I look at the map, you can see I'm farther north than I was. So if I use a screen transition now, it'll resolve my position relative to that. It's also worth noting that when you're in a screen wrap state, things like entrances will still work correctly if you're able to find one and interact with one, and that will come into play shortly. Alright, the first application of this I'll do right here. It's called Death Mountain Ascent, or DMA. And this is a way to get up to Death Mountain without the need of either the flute or the lifting upgrade to lift the rock and get up there the correct way. So, we'll do this upward teleport. Now we're on the bottom of the screen. This screen has a big open transition in the bottom, so what I'm going to do is use that transition and move over. Alright. Now I'm on Death Mountain, but the camera is all wonky. You can usually tell whether Link is in frame properly based on the presence of his shadow at his sprite. So the fact that he doesn't have a shadow makes me know that he's not where he needs to be, and I can move up and down to fix that. The camera will lock when moving in one direction but not the other direction, and that's what allows it to resolve itself. And when you come back around the top of the screen, you can see now Link does have a shadow, which means that I'm officially in frame, even though my location is still clearly very wonky. So where I actually am here is here. So I'll transition from the left to the right, and I'm here, moving up and down, trying to fix my position. Now to fix the camera, we're going to use the door to that cave right there, from the glitched position. So most doors will fix the camera because they refresh the overworld or load it from scratch when you exit, but not all doors. That's something I'll go into in more detail in another tutorial, but for the sake of this one, all you need to know is that all dungeons and every single cave or house with more than one accessible entrance will all fix the screen when entered and exited. So let me do this from the beginning again. I'll start by doing the upward teleport, moving to the right here, move up and down until I can see Link's shadow, and then I need to find the door. It's not too hard to find. It's just right up here. You need to bring Link properly into frame before you do this, or this fade out here can actually take up to 2 full minutes. You'll think the game is frozen, but if you wait for 2 full minutes, it'll actually eventually load. And now when we walk out here, we're on Death Mountain. Everything looks good and normal. We're happy we broke the game. And then we fix it again. When we jump through a screen transition from the bottom and wrap around to the top of the screen, I mentioned earlier that entrances will still work if we're able to find one. So if I do a spin dash clip here, nothing fancy about it, just a regular clip, I'll wrap around to, well, physically I'm on the top of the screen, but of course the game true coordinate position thinks I'm much lower. So I'm interacting with things around the top of the screen. And where I actually am is in front of the Tower of Hera, but I'm partially stuck into the side of it. So the first thing you want to do is actually press up, and the game will push you down. It is possible, if you press down first, to get pushed up and stuck into the wall. If this happens, you only need to hold up until you jump down. It's kind of weird, but you're never fully stuck. I just recommend pressing up first, just to be sure you never get partially stuck. So from here we actually need to find the stairs to lead up to the Tower of Hera, but they're just a little bit to the right here. Really easy to find. And that's it. Now we're in the Tower of Hera. Great way to get to the top of Death Mountain. Where we were embedded was just kind of in the wall here, so it's really easy to find the stairs from there. Another really important screen wrap that's very similar to the Tower of Hera clip is the Ganon's Tower clip. For this one, I'll show an easy technique first, which is to use the hook shot. So we're going to line ourselves up with our back against this wall here, and then do the hook dash. We know it works because Link's feet will speed up, his animation will speed up, so you know you got it correctly. And now you just hold straight left until you get into this wall. After this, It's kind of unintuitive, but you need to press down right to jump. I'm going to release my sword to buffer the diagonal input and hold down right while the sword is spinning to jump. Alright, now we're very near to the stairs in Ganon's tower, but similar to how we needed to press up first when we did the Tower of Heraclip, for this one the first input we press needs to be right or east, and that'll push us into the stairs, and then we just walk right up into Ganon's tower. If you don't have the hook shot and you still want to do this, you can do it by dash buffering into the wall. You want to start the same Y coordinate position by putting your back against this wall, but then you want to just start dash buffering in. I like to start dash buffering a little bit early before I touch the wall, because you don't want to let the wall move you up at all before you start moving into it. You want to be very careful not to let that happen at all. So you gotta be pretty careful about these movements. If you feel like you messed up at all, just restart it, because this is really easy to go wrong just from a little bit of bad positioning. Alright, so if you did dash buffer incorrectly, you should be able to just hold down right to jump the same way as you did before. Press right on the stairs and then into the dungeon. So the first thing I showed, Death Mountain Ascent, made use of the game's true coordinate position relative to the entire overworld in order to bypass some obstacles. The other two use the local screen coordinates in order to find an obstacle, basically, or a physical interactable object in order to get into those two dungeons. This one's going to make use of the true coordinate position again. So the first thing I'll do a spin dash, and I'm going to jump to the screen transition here. Now I'm going to climb down the mountain. I already know the way down the mountain. It's not too hard. There's a few things you gotta move around. There we go. Jump a few times, and here we are. Okay, so now as you can see, I'm interacting with things that you can actually see. You gotta look at an overworld map, I think, just to find the way down the first few times. But it's not too hard once you get used to it. Alright, so now if I look at my map, I appear to be on the pyramid. Obviously I'm on Death Mountain, but if I were to, for example, use the mirror right now, I'd lay a portal down, and based on my true coordinate position, there's now a warp inside of the Hyrule Castle courtyard. So I'm going to want to try to get to that. Now there's a few ways you can do it. The most important thing is not to lose that warp, which means you can't go back into the Dark World at all, and you cannot save and quit. You can die on Death Mountain. Saving and quitting will remove the warp, but actually a death won't. You could use the flute. You can do a kind of DMD in the light world. I'm going to use the flute for this example just because it's easiest. So if you've already killed Aghanim and the castle gate is a portal to the Dark World, you're not going to be able to go into it to do this because it removed the warp. On this save file, my castle gate is actually closed. That's kind of hard to explain, but I'm going to go the long way around, as if I'd killed Aghanim. This is a good thing to show anyway, so that you can learn, well, not really learn because everybody's gone through this route, but yeah. Alright, so now that I'm in the courtyard, I can find this warp. I'm going to want to activate this from below, because I need to be facing north. It's pretty lenient, this warp position. This is going to put me inside this door, and because I'm facing north, it activates the door instantly, pulls me in, and now I found a shortcut to the Great Fairy Fountain, or whatever this is called. Pretty cool. This is an example of a screen wrap that goes from left to right. So what we'll do here is I like to just line myself up with this fence here for reference, but it really doesn't matter. This is actually very lenient. And we're going to start dash buffering into this. We don't want to go so far in that we jump like that, but just a few buffers in will work. Alright, so what's going to happen is I'm going to charge a dash to actually do this jump. And I'm going to jump all the way through the screen transition on the left and wrap around to the right. While I'm jumping, I'm going to start holding right. This way, it'll activate fake flippers automatically if I don't have the flippers. And if you do have the flippers, then it just works anyway. So it's just a consistent approach. What'll happen then is the screen transition is going to look super weird, and you'll see that. It seems to kind of pull you farther, and it kind of scrolls away in a weird way. What ended up happening is I actually haven't move to a different screen really, even though it started trying to load the next screen. If I open and close the map, you can see that the screen that I started on remains loaded. So from this weird place that I'm swimming now, first thing I'll do is press up, and that kind of pushes me out of a wall that you can't actually see. And then I'll move right just a little bit, and then up. So where I am now is actually on the ledge directly above the bat cave. So I can just jump right in. This lets me get to the bat cave without the hammer or the mirror, which is a nice little shortcut. Last, I want to show a few miscellaneous clips that I don't really feel fit into any of the other categories. The first one I guess I'll refer to as cloud clipping, and this is specifically going from the clouds back onto solid land. So to get out into the clouds, you can just do an upward teleport in a few places on Death Mountain, one of which is right here. And then the objective will be to get back onto land from out here. Okay, so you can see it looks like I'm walking in shallow water on some parts of this here, and in fact when you get near the edge of these, it'll actually behave like deep water. So this works a little differently whether you have flippers or don't, and I'll show it with both ways. I'll use this island as to demonstrate the technique from the left side and from the right side. Alright, so right now I do have flippers. So what I'm going to do, and you can do this from a few places, a few different ways, but the way I'm most familiar with is to kind of aim for that corner up there and try to jump onto it like that. Once you get here, you just hold right and then kind of tap the down button, so you're switching between the right and down right input, and you just kind of rhythmically tap until you eventually get through, and it is pretty much as easy as it looks. From the right side with flippers is actually a lot more difficult. So if you have an opportunity to do it from the left or the right with flippers, I recommend doing it from the left side. Doing it from the right side is possible, so I'll show this as well. Again, I'm going to kind of aim for that same corner there, try to land on it. So what's going to happen here is if I'm holding left and I switch the input to down left, you see Link faces down. What I actually want to happen is for him to continue facing left while I'm holding down left. So the way to do this is to switch from down left to left and then back to down left very quickly. You need to release that down input for like 1 frame. There we go. I don't know any trick to do it more easily or more consistently. All I know is you just kind of wiggle across the D-pad a few times, however many times it takes, until you are facing left while holding down left. And after that you don't have to do anything else. Just keep holding down left and you'll jump in. Without flippers, the technique is a little bit different. I can't really jump in as I did before because, of course, the game's going to kick me out. So what I want to do is actually try to get a little bit closer before I jump in. So I need to kind of get around this jump trigger. And the way I'll do that is by coming in from above like this. So this wall right here, I'll use this to automatically align me by moving a little bit to the left. And as I move down, you see the game's kind of pushing me to the left. I know that's going to put me on the exact X position that I want to start on, the X coordinate position. From there, if I move down until I jump, I also know I'll be on the lowest position. So from here, you want to just do a very slight tap to the left and also down. It's not terribly precise. I don't think it's exactly 1 frame of movement, but like 2 or 3 works. Just as basically as little bit as you can move by tapping the D-pad. So from here, I'm going to try to jump in, and then you'll notice if I hold left while I'm jumping, when I land, he kind of gets pushed to the right a little bit. And that's important. So I'll try to jump in, start holding left in midair, and then right after he hits the ground and gets pushed to the right, I'm going to change the D-pad input from left to right. And that's what that's supposed to look like. It might take a few tries. I'm actually surprised that only took me 1 try that time. Sometimes it takes a lot of tries. But really the most important thing is the starting position. Needs to be pretty correct. The starting position for the right side is symmetrical to the left side, but the execution is different. Without flippers, I actually think that the right side is a lot easier, but as I mentioned with flippers, I think the right side is a lot harder. So we'll do the same thing to start ourselves here. We'll use this wall to kind of align ourselves, then jump in the water, and then tap right and tap down. From here, we're just going to press left to jump, but once we're in midair, we only have to hold up left, and it should work easy first try. if you're in a good starting position, it will always work first try. There's no real execution error like on the left side. So if it doesn't work first try, I actually recommend just redoing the whole beginning setup. If you move a little bit too low or something and it doesn't work, you can just try again, but it's quite easy. So this will work pretty much anywhere where you see the same kind of corners to get back in bounds. There's also another weird thing that happens in the clouds, and you saw me walk into one earlier by accident. There's actually these weird like little ledges that you can activate. You can activate them from above or from below. For this one specifically, if you're a little bit farther to the left, so you're kind of standing over this corner, then it'll put you all the way back in bounds quite easily if this is where you want to go. There's a few of these scattered around the clouds, even I don't know where all of them are. And you can't use all of them to get back in bounds, only some of them, but for the most part, doing the cloud clipping works just fine. This is another kind of unique situation where you have to do an unintuitive technique to get where you want to go. This will work in the light world or the dark world, though it's more common to need to do it in the dark world. This is called the Turtle Rock climb. I know we're pretty far from Turtle Rock, but this is usually the way that we climb this mountain on the way to Turtle Rock. So that's how it got its name. So the first thing you're going to want to do is just do a downward teleport from the second rock from the top here in this wall. Alright. Now from here, the first thing you want to press, if you press any button, is down, and never press up, because if you press up you can get pushed past this seam in the wall here, and if you get below it you can be stuck forever. So what we're going to do now is called a, I believe in the fighting game scene it's called a half circle back or something. You want to press right, then down right, then down left, then left. You just kind of want to go from right to left in a half circle down across the D-pad. And you just want to do that kind of slowly. You don't want to do it too fast, because if you do it might not work, until you get all the way to the top here. And once you get to the top you can just activate this ledge to jump. Do that a couple times. You'll eventually end up on this giant bridge, and you can get to the east side of Death Mountain from here, on your way to Turtle Rock. Before there were fancy techniques for executing clips, there was some weird ways to use the way that the game is constructed and the way collision works to get out of bounds. One of the old ones, and this doesn't have a huge purpose now because there's other better ways to get through this wall, but I still want to show it for historical sake, I guess. If you come down here, and you kind of want to press up and tap up until you move a little bit left on the slope, then you press down, the trees will actually push you up, and you can move up a little bit more. If you're far enough into this wall that you can press right, the next thing you want to do is just hold right and then hold up right, and you'll jump into the water. If you don't have flippers, you can hold left while jumping, and then you'll get pushed against the wall into the screen transition and automatically get fake flippers. It's kind of a cute old school thing. And if you are ever in water, in places where you're not really supposed to be in water, a lot of the times there's a screen transition very close to an angled wall like this. In these cases, if you use the screen transition as low as you can be, and then when you get to the other side, in this case I'll hold up left, but you basically want to hold the direction parallel to the wall. If you happen to be in the symmetrical situation on the right side, hold up left and you'll just pretty much jump in bounds pretty easily. Nice. Wow. That's a funny glitch. Alright, well I think that just about covers it for this Overworld Out of Bounds Glitches tutorial. I know I wasn't able to show every application of every glitch. Unfortunately, there's just too many to show, but I did try to show common and useful ones, but also I wanted to make sure that really the purpose of the examples was just to secure the fundamentals of execution so that you're able to improvise more well on your own, or if you see a new one that you haven't seen before, it's really easy to understand and then execute it on your own without needing an individual tutorial for that specific application. So hopefully I was effective in doing that. Hopefully you've learned something and stayed awake through this one, because I know it is kind of a doozy. So thanks again for watching, and see you in the next one.